Hi everybody, and welcome to my next tutorial. My name is Maltanan, and last night when I was just surfing around the internet, I went to CG Talk forums, and I found a guy that asked for a way to create a background with some snakes moving around. So I thought, well, this is pretty interesting idea. Well, the replies was, what level of realism are you looking for? Because if you need something to be realistic, you would be better off recording the snakes, with your TV cam instead of making them, in CG. But I thought, hey, I think it's possible, so why don't I give it a try? So here we are today watching this tutorial with a fully CG generated snake moving in the background, and I would like to show you how I did this. Well, this snake maybe isn't as perfect as it should be, but it all depends on what you need and what kind of detail you want to have, because basically you can do pretty much anything with the method I'm going to show you in a few minutes. So let's get right to it. Let me just delete all these files so we can start from scratch. And first of all, I would like to show you a basic model that I've used to create this effect. So to do that, let me just create a new composition. Let's make it 640 by 480 square pixels, 30 seconds long. That's okay. And now the whole idea is that the snake is based on segments. I think I can call them segments. So and one segment is the leader and the other segments just follow along. So let me just create a first segment for you so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's create a new solid and let's make it 30 by 30, or you know what, let's do it another way. Let me call this snake, and let's create a new composition, 30 by 30, same length and everything. Okay, and now let's create a new solid, make comp size, that's okay, and let's call this segment. Let's create a folder for segments. Okay, and now let's go back to our snake composition and let's drag this segment in here. So now the next step is to create an animation for this segment, of course. So let's press P on the keyboard to reveal the position properties, and let's do a simple animation. So let's move forward. Here, for example, here, 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 and here. We can just tweak this a little bit to make more smoother movement, but never mind that at this point. So now we have a leader segment. Let's call this leader, and now we need to create the rest of the segments so they could follow along. And to do that, let's just duplicate this layer. Let's move it below to keep everything organized. Let's look for the position keyframes and let us delete those because we are not going to need them. Let's alt click on the stopwatch to add an expression, and here's the whole trick this is the whole trick. The rest of the tutorial is basically tuning up the appearance of the snake, and I would also show you cool tricks that you can do with this technique, because the possibilities are endless. So let me just write the magical expression. Let's use the pick whip tool, point to position, and here we need to add something to the expression that a pick whip generated for us, and this is basically value at time. And now we need to define the time that we want to get the value from, right, from the other layer. So let's type in time minus what's going on? My cursor is going away. Minus 10, for example. Okay, let's see how it works. Well, it seems to be working. A nice thing would be to have some kind of a controller. I love controllers, you probably know that already. A nice thing would be to have a controller to control this value, so the offset, we can call it offset. So let me just create a new null object, let's call this controller, and let's drag the slider control to it. Let's rename it to time offset. Let me go back to the expression, create a variable to hold the value of the slider, so SLD slider value, and let's just use the pick whip tool again to point to the slider. And as you can see, a value of 10 gave us a pretty huge distance between those two segments, and you know, just playing around with the slider is pretty comfortable when you can, you know, just drag it off the screen. So the thing that I always do, I always divide this by some factor, for example 1000. And here let me replace this with slider value, hit enter on your numpad, and we can hardly see this difference because the slider is 0, but when we drag it off the screen we can see some changes going on, and this is good. This is good. And now the only thing left to do is simply to duplicate this layer, right? Well, not exactly, because in this layer we are pointing to the layer called leader, and we don't want that. We want to point to the layer above in a hierarchy in here. So to do that, we replace the leader with index, which basically gives us the index value of the layer. So in this case it would be 3, and let's add -1 in here, and this should fix the problem. It looks the same, but now if we duplicate this layer several times, hitting Ctrl D, we get a nice looking snake. Well, maybe it's not nice looking yet, but now it's just pure fun and pure pleasure, you know, just to play around with the appearance of this snake. So this is the basic rule. And now what else we can do with it? Let me just delete those additional layers. Let's call this segment, for example. And next thing that comes to my mind is, you know, you can see that when it comes to some curves, the squares might get away from each other. Let me just zoom in. As you can see, we have a gap in here. It's a tiny gap, but it's still a gap. And this is because those are squares, and a round segment would probably be much better for this. So let's just go back to the segment composition. Let's select our black solid, and let's double click on the masking tool, and there we go. We have a circle. So now let's go back. As you can see, everything changed. Now it looks almost okay. Right. There's one more thing that I didn't told you about. It's a pretty nice thing to do in this kind of animation. You have to convert all these intermediate frames between the first and the last keyframe to roving keyframes. So right click on the keyframes and select rove across time. This will basically change the speed of the animation to be constant. So we can be sure that the distance between the segments won't be increased or decreased due to the speed in which the segments are moving. So let's just create another duplicates. Let's see how it looks. Well, it looks pretty nice. At least I like it. Next, what else can we do? Well, you're probably thinking, okay, so what if I would put a texture on these segments? I would have to rotate these segments along the path, right? So, if you're thinking this, it means that you're still listening to me. So, I will show you that this is not as hard as it may seem. Let's just zoom in into our segment composition. Just for test purposes, let me just draw a line in here. Like so, and let's apply the stroke. Let's apply the stroke effect and mask 2, and this is the direction that the snake is looking at the moment. Okay, so let's just go back, and as you can see, this is not what we want. We want this to be rotating along the path, and this might seem very difficult to fix, but it isn't. It really isn't. The only thing to do is to go to this segment, to the leader segment, and right click, go to transform, auto orient, and orient along path. And this is it. You have to do the same for the next segment, and then just duplicate it. Duplicates. Looks nice. Yes, it looks nice. Yeah, I know. Okay, so what next? Let's put a texture on our segments. So let's just delete all the additional segments again, and let's go into the segment composition. No, let me just import the textures that I already prepared for this tutorial, and that's right. And now here's a texture of a body. So let's just drag it into the composition. Let's turn this off for a second, and let's scale it down a bit. Holding down Shift will make sure that you preserve the aspect ratio of the footage. So just in case you didn't know, this looks okay. And now let's turn the black solid back on. And why, you ask? Well, I'm basically going to use this as a mask. Let me just delete that stroke and get rid of the stroke effect. And let's select these two vertices. I don't know. Let's just scale them down, and maybe let's do something like this, so it's more roundish. And this looks okay, and let's use this as an alpha matte for the texture. So it looks like this, and it looks cool, I must say. And just let us take a look. And just duplicate this again. that looks pretty nice, but we have, you know, in the curves, when we are not turning around, we have these gaps in here, and we can fix this actually by modifying the time offset value. That's right. And of course by making even more segments. And the thing that I like the most in this technique is that I can choose, you know, whatever the segments I like and just hit duplicate. I don't have to worry about anything. I just, you know, select them and just hit Ctrl D, and this is all I have to do, really. So okay, this looks fine, but let's say I want to add a head to our snake, and ooh, a head would be more difficult, you might think, but no, it's actually as simple as everything else. Let's just delete this unnecessary segments. Well, actually, no, sorry, I was going to say something, but I would be wrong, so nothing happened. Let's go to the segments and let's duplicate this segment, because basically we're going to use the same size and everything. So let's duplicate this, hit Ctrl D, and let's call this head. Now double click on the composition, and we have to replace this texture with our head. So to do that, hold down Alt key and drag the footage onto your timeline, and there you go. Let's just turn off the track matte for a second, and we see that we have to scale this down and rotate it a bit. So let's just do it now. That should be -90 degrees, that's right. Let's just scale this up, and maybe we can try the alpha matte now. Yes, it looks okay, I think. So now let's go back to our snake composition, and let's replace the leader layer, which is basically the segment, as you can see in here, with our head. So once again, hold down Alt key and drag it to the composition, and there you have it. Here's the head. So now let's just duplicate these segments again. Now let me turn off this controller because it's okay. We have a head. Well, I don't think it's the best head I've seen, but never mind that. We can always, you know, make the segments thinner a bit. So let's go back to the segments and let's select the black solid layer that we are using as a alpha matte for the texture. Let's go to the mask tool and let's hit Ctrl T to scale it down. Hold Shift Ctrl to just, you know, do this in a symmetrical way. Is that the right word? Symmetrical. We can also make this a bit. If you're hearing some strange noises, I would just like to point out that it's my cat. You know, he just went crazy and he's running around the room and just destroying everything on its way. Ctrl T. Oh, that could be funny. Let's see how it looks. Well, a very, very skinny snake. But okay, I think we can leave it like this because it looks funny. Don't worry about this at the moment. We can fix this later. Never mind that. The next thing would probably making a tail. So to make a tail, let's just find a place in our animation when these segments that we're going to make the tail from are, you know, in one line. It makes things much easier, and this would be 1, 2, 3, 4 last segments. So let's just find these 4 last segments. Here they are. Okay, and let's start from the last one. Let's apply corner pin. That's right. Let's just zoom in and let's just drag it here. here. Like this. And like this. And the same thing with the previous one. Sorry for that. Well, there's nothing interesting in here, but I think we could do this, just so we can see how flexible this is. Okay, and the next one. I think that's okay. And let's leave it like this. Okay, let me just zoom out and let's see how this snake animates. Just unselect this. Well, it looks pretty nice. If we would use, smaller segments, we would get much smoother curves. Or we can always go to the leader layer and just, make this animation smoother. So let's just select this keyframe. Something like this and like this. So this should fix the problem, as you can see. Okay, so next thing, let's make this snake, let's make each second segment a different color. Well, this might be difficult, but as everything else in this tutorial, it isn't. It really isn't. Let's just go back to our project. Let's just duplicate this segment, hit Ctrl D. Let's call this segment orange. And this was segment red. And double click on this, create a new adjustment layer. Let's look for hue and saturation. Apply this. Let's pump up the saturation a bit and let's scroll the hue so we can get a nice orange looking color. I think this is it. Let's just go back to our snake composition, and now what, right? Well, basically let's just delete all these layers, maybe all except those 3 that we've made a tail from, because it took us a lot of time. Oh, this reminds me of something, but never mind that. Okay, let's just duplicate this segment and let's replace it with our orange segment. So let's just alt drag to the comp window or to the timeline, and as you can see we have an orange color in here. But what to do with this? Well, basically the same thing. Let's just select the layer and alt drag it, change it to orange, and now let's just select 2 layers and hit Ctrl D. And now, there's one thing you need to know. As you can see, when After Effects duplicates layers, it moves them above the original layers. So basically we get 2 orange and 2 red colors, and we don't want that. So we just need to drag them off like this and then just move them back to the position like so. And then we can just duplicate this 4, hit Ctrl D. Let's do something like this. Sorry, like this. And again. And let's just zoom out. Let's see how it looks. Nice, pretty nice. And what if. What if you would like to make this snake even longer? Well, you probably guessed already that all you have to do is just duplicate this again, hit Ctrl D. Let's just drag it off, move it in here, for example, and let's just move forward in time so you can see how nice this looks. This reminds me the tail of the facehugger from Alien series, from Alien movie series, especially from the game Alien vs Predator. If you've played it, the loader looked something like this. Okay, never mind that. Okay, and what if we would decide to make two snakes follow each other? I mean, the second one following the first one, like a mama snake and baby snake. Well, the only thing you have to do is to turn off some of the segments. Let's turn off this segment also, and this segment. No, let's leave this one on. And all we have to do is replace the next visible segment with the head. So Alt drag it to the timeline window, and there you go. But of course we need to make the tail in here. So you might think, okay, we need to apply the corner pin effect again. But no, we only need to duplicate these 3 layers and move them right below the last visible layer. And as you can see, you have 2 snakes following the same path. Pretty amazing, huh? And you know, as you can see, the possibilities are endless with this technique. You can do anything with those segments. You can apply different effects to different segments. You can do pretty much anything with this. And the more time you spend on making the texture and the movement, you know, more natural, I think at some point it would be really hard to see that this is a fully CG snake. So let's just finish this up. As you probably know, the snakes, they don't go, you know, they don't follow any path in really. They always, you know, like looking around and stuff like that. And how do we make this effect when we have, you know, one leader layer and then the other are just following along? Well, nothing more simple. Let's just go to our controller. I just love controllers and you know, expression driven animation. So let me just create a new slider. Never mind. And basically what we are going to do is that we are going to offset the animation with the wiggler. So let's just make this wiggle frequency. Let's duplicate this. Let's rename this to wiggle range, and let's create a checkbox that will tell the leader layer to use the wiggler or not. So use wiggle, and let's just find the first leader layer that is using the keyframes. You know what, let me just lock this palette so I can see the values in here all the time. And now let's go to animation, add expression, and let's create a variable x equals wiggle with wiggle frequency and with a range of wiggle range. And because a wiggler returns two-dimensional values if it's used in a position on a 2D layer, we need to choose one of them, because we are going to use x and y for x and y in here. So Let's just use the first returned value, so the x basically. Let's do the same with the y variable, but we have to, use the second returned value from the wiggler. And now let's just return x and y. That should be it. But we also have this use wiggle checkbox. So to use that, we need to create a condition. So if, let's just point to the use wiggle checkbox, equals true, then this. Now we will probably get an error message because we don't have we don't tell the expression what to do if the checkbox is off, but let's just find out. That's right. So to fix this, we could of course create else statement, but I'm too lazy to do that. So let's just go to the beginning of the expression before the condition, and let's just point the pick whip tool to ourselves. So basically this will first get the values from here, and then if this checkbox is checked, it will use these values from here. Hit enter. Seems to be working. So let's check the checkbox and let's see how this changes. Ooh, sweet Jesus. Let's just change the frequency to maybe 0.5. Oh yes, that looks much nicer. As you can see, this movement isn't as smooth as it was, so this is basically good. Okay, so this is how it looks right now. And to get rid of this problem, the snakes getting out of their nest, if you can call this a nest, you can just start the animation off screen, for example, or just pre-compose this and then offset the composition to to the place where the snakes are out of the nest. And okay, this looks pretty nice. There's a bit randomness in the movement, and basically the snakes are following the path. Let me just add a final touch to this. So let's turn the transparency button on, and let's make a new adjustment layer, and let's use let's add a drop shadow. I already have a preset that I like, so let's apply this. This is basically a combination of two drop shadow effects with different settings, so nothing special about it. Let's see how it looks. Okay, and now let's create a background for this. So let's put this in a new composition by dragging it to the Make New Comp button, and let's call this Final, and let's create a floor or a background for the snakes. So this is a texture that I happen to have on my hard drive, and let's just make it fill the whole composition. So let's apply the motion tile effect. Do this, and let's just turn the snake off for a second, and let's just pump up the output values. So let's make it 200, no, even more, 250, 240, no, 250. Okay, well, this is basically a good thing to keep these values as low as possible, not to oversize them, because After Effects render this even though it is not visible in the comp window. So it is good to keep that in mind. 190. That looks okay. And let's just see how the snakes look. Well, this is pretty good, but I think it's a bit flat, so To fix this, let's turn the snakes off for a second and let's create a new solid, make it comp size, and we are going to use this solid to add some lightning to the composition. And to do that, let's apply the ramp effect. Let's make this go from left to right, and now let's apply colorama effect. That will basically change this gradient to, you know, as many colors as we want. And let's change the output cycle, and let's use one of the presets. Caribbean. No, that's not good. Maybe something like this. Almost, but we're not there yet. Yes, I think this is okay. And next thing to do is to choose a transfer mode, so we can, you know, just go through this. But this is pretty annoying, going through this menu. And there's a cool shortcut to cycle between all these transfer modes, and this shortcut is Shift and the key next to the backspace, so it's a plus sign. As you can see, the transfer mode changes each time I press the shortcut. And let's find something that fits nicely. We can also use the minus sign to go the other way. I think this is good, but we need to change, you know, the areas of the light. So let's just play with the colorama. I think this looks nice. And let's just get rid of this one. And now let's put the snakes back on. Yes, that looks pretty nice. Let's just zoom in. Pretty cool. This looks okay. So I think that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and that the guy with the nickname Get to the Top enjoyed this tutorial also, because this is made specially for him, because he got me inspired, and I, you know, just started thinking about how to create this effect. And you know that I hate animating with keyframes. I use keyframes only when I really need to. I always try to do everything with expressions and stuff like that, because then the whole animation is dynamic and I can always change my mind without having to look for the right keyframe, and you know what I mean. So once again, this is Maltenan for maltenan.com. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more exciting tutorials. See ya. Cheers.